understand that there's a difference between real life and a difference between screen life, but we also have to understand that because everybody's in this screen world, that a lot of times, like the things people see on social media and on these screens, they become reality. So a lot of people's identities are formed based on what they see on the screen. But if you want to live a peaceful life and just be less stressed, then you have to learn how to enjoy real life without having to outsource your critical thinking and your learning and your entertainment to social media and to the internet and to the screen world. Understand that there's more to life to what's on the screen, and everything that's on the screen is not a representation of reality. Silent but Deadly Podcast, man. I ain't gonna lie, every week I feel like I missed the last week. I guess my mind just be in other places during the week. And I really don't be thinking about the podcast that much because, I got other priorities. And I got other things I'm doing. I got other things I'm thinking about. And I think the podcast is important, but man, as long as I kick these episodes every Sunday, I think I'm gonna be cool. I think we'll be alright. And before I start this podcast, before I start what I gotta say, before I spiel, before I do this long form, just talk, I want to say thank y'all for watching. Thank y'all. Thank the viewers. I hope I'm still providing value. Well, I mean, I watch it over. I know I'm providing value. So whoever is watching, take everything. Take the meat, spit out the bones. Do your own research and go crazy. But I like to encourage you to subscribe, support the channel, but if not, it is what it is. I'm still gonna keep coming back every Sunday, strong. And before I start the podcast, I just want to do a little nugget on the side. Like sometimes we may lose steam. Some of our goals we thinking about, and some of our things we trying to accomplish. But once we get back on the horse and once we get over that mental hurdle and do the hard thing, then we get that momentum back, and then we can start going back in the right direction. Like, for example, for me, why I'm saying this right now is because I really don't even, like a lot of times, I really don't even feel like coming and kicking the podcast. And I think I should do a better job of not keeping the podcast until Sunday where I have to rush it. And I think I should try to do it throughout the week instead of waking up on Sunday and having to kick it and edit it and all this type of stuff. I think it'll be better if I just do the podcast throughout the week whenever I have some time or wherever I feel it, edit it, and then I just have it just post it on Sunday. But my goal is to just post this podcast every Sunday, so that's what I'm gonna do. And so that's just a little nugget. But as you can tell by the title of the video, today we're gonna be talking about screens versus reality. And this is a topic that I'm very interested in covering. I've been waiting to cover it for a long time. I'll probably say that about every topic, but I guess I just got a lot to say about this stuff. And last time I had some notes, and I think that helped me out when I was talking about the health and fitness, which is a topic I'm definitely going to return to. Excuse me, but today I don't even have that many notes. I just got screens versus realities and 2 points, because when I'm kicking these podcasts, a lot of times it's stuff that I've been thinking about for a long time, so I really don't need notes. And if I write down what I feel, it's gonna mess up the flow of the podcast. So I think if I just come and talk, I'm just freestyling, I'm kicking it off the easy, and I can make connections on the fly. And really with this podcast, I'm just practicing. I'm practicing talking. I'm putting my ideas out there. I'm being able to weave my ideas and my thoughts. So ultimately, this topic is very important because we're in a new generation. We're in a new period, a new time that's never before seen. I don't know if there was screens ever. There might have been some kind of weird technology, but definitely in history that we know about, or history that's taught to us, is the first time where there's screens and there's the internet, and what comes with this is a lot of things. And before I start talking about screens and reality and everything that comes with it, I like to put on the top that technology is not neutral, meaning that technology is not bad. It's not neither bad nor good. Technology is both bad and good. There's good things that come from technology, and there's bad things that come from technology. But we're not going to focus on technology because technology could mean anything. Technology could mean a stick with a rock on it. Today we're going to focus on screens, being like our phones and computers. When I say screens versus reality, I'm really thinking about more of the social media aspect and text and videos and things like that. And the thing about screens versus reality, and I like to talk about the this versus that because there's a difference. But with the screens versus reality thing, there's a difference between screens and reality. However, some people don't know that there's a difference between screens and versus reality. And second, sometimes what's on the screen turns into reality. So this is kind of a topic that I'm still wrestling with. And like I said, I'm still trying to work my ideas and figure it out because a lot of times for me, because I'm not really all connected into a lot of stuff that the screens provide, my reality is not connected to the screens. But if you live in a culture or in a population or a community where everybody is living off of the screens, then the screen what's on the screen turns into the reality. So let me give you an example and expand upon that. So I was just listening to one of my news sources or one of my long form podcasts that talk about this kind of culture stuff and stuff like this, and he was basically talking about how when people get their identity off of social media, and I'm gonna have to make another episode about identity. See, this is how I grow. I come on the camera and I just talk, and my mind just goes in different places. And identity is an important topic. But when we think about identity, a lot of people get their identity off social media. They get their identity off of so-called influencers and so-called celebrities. And so what that creates is kind of a archetype or a carbon copy of what you see. So when we're talking about identity, people don't really have their own identity. I feel back in the day, a lot of identity probably was based off of other things that people saw, but it wasn't how it is today. Maybe a lot of people's identity was based off of their family values and how they were raised, and probably more stuff like that, because you're gonna be what you see and how you're raised and how you come up. Just the things that you consume, your brain and stuff like that. So when we're talking about carbon copies of identity and archetypes, we're gonna see people that, and what we see now in the culture is people that are just clones of what they see on screens. And so this is why I'm wrestling with the idea of screens versus reality, because in my mind, screens is different than reality. But in this culture, when everybody is on their screens and what they see on the screen turns into what's in real life, then I guess it becomes reality. So let me give you an example. If that's just on the top of my mind, like, and I think I talked about this before, probably in a celebrity episode, where if it's a whole bunch of black people, but not black people, people in the hood, and they're gonna see what rappers that is being pushed is wearing, what they're saying, what they're consuming, like the drugs they're taking, and their mannerisms. So they make their identity based off what they see on the screen. And this goes for everybody. Let's say a white girl, I'm not really sure what they be basing their identity off, but maybe like you see the Katy Perry's or and those type of people, just public figures and figures on the internet, or some even these TikTok stars. And so you start to see people's mannerisms change, and it's a reflection of what they see. And this is not a episode about identity, but I think it goes directly with screens versus reality, because the difference between real life and screens is very paramount if you disconnect the two. If you don't have a screen, then what is around you, what you see on a daily basis, what you experience is your reality. However, when you are on a screen, the reality, it could be anything. The reality is literally everything, because almost everything is on the internet. And that brings up another interesting point, because now we have these things called algorithms where you see what you want to see. Basically, it's not you when you go on the internet, when you go on a screen, you don't see everything that the world has to offer. You either have to know how to research and look things up, which even gets dicey a little bit, but you either look that up, but most of the time, if you're just in a brain neutral state and you're just going on the internet to explore, they're gonna show you what the algorithm thinks you want to see. So for example, back in the early days of YouTube, and YouTube is my screen type thing. I don't use anything but YouTube, and I'm really trying to fall away from YouTube if I'm being honest. But back in the day on YouTube, it used to be a wild, wild west, and you get on YouTube and you just see everything. And a lot of things that you see was popular, it would be a lot of views. Like, it would have a lot of views, so I guess that would be things that people are drawn to. But I'm actually not sure if YouTube has always had an algorithm, but I'm sure it hasn't. But nowadays, the algorithm is crazy, and so you go onto YouTube and everything you see is stuff that you want to see. So for me, when I go on YouTube, all I'm watching is like MMA videos, like UFC videos, and that's the brunt of the stuff I watch on YouTube. But also like podcasts and like workout stuff and things like this. And so yeah, the algorithm. And so when you're on a screen, it influences your life. It influences your perception of reality based off what you see. And say if you didn't have a screen, like I was just saying, what you see is what it is. So this definitely changes reality. So, but there's a difference. So let me get into my notes. So I kind of went into my last point about the identity thing. But I'll circle back to the first point where I say, where I wrote down communication, how screens influence communication. And so it's important to note that when you're talking to somebody on the screen, like texting, even call and FaceTime, which is a little bit different than texting, but specifically texting, when you're talking to people on a medium that's just text, it's completely different than if you're sitting in front of somebody, looking them in the eyes and having a conversation. And now because of screens, a lot of people can't even look each other in the eyes and really have a real conversation. And because of the nature of screens, and because of the nature of the culture we live in, the quick culture, the shorts culture, the TikTok culture, the non-reading culture, the microwave generation, this bleeds into the conversations, and it bleeds into communication. And communication is a very important aspect of us as humans, because we're so-called social creatures, which I agree with, but I don't really agree with the terminology. But I know for myself, like, communication is like, I know it releases something, and it's something that we need to survive, and where we have families and we have friends for a reason. And so back in the day, we lived in times where people were reading, well, even before they was reading, they were standing together and they were talking, they were explaining how they felt, and you could communicate things so that there was no misconceptions, and people understood like where they stood with each other, and it was nothing fake. It was no like charades. I was listening to a podcast with John Bernthal, I think that's his name, the Punisher dude, and he was talking about he was living in Russia. And I'm saying this to say that not every culture is like this right now in the world, because not every culture is so heavily influenced by screens. But maybe this is not true, because he was talking about a story from the past. But he was basically talking about he was living in Russia, and the people in Russia, they can have a conversation with somebody they just met, and the conversation will end up in tears. It would turn very emotional, things like this, and you just have real conversation. And man, that sounds great. That sounds great to me. But this is something that's lost in communication because nowadays, when you're so used to texting somebody, you're just like, hey, what you doing? Nothing. What about you? Uh, uh, and just like, oh man, this is crazy. The text it turns, the way you text is gonna be the way you talk. So like right now I'm in school, uh, in college, and the way people talk is like everybody has the same cadence, and not the same cadence, but everybody says the same thing. It's the same loop. It's the same loop of communication. And I think this might have a little bit to do with the sororities and stuff like that, but it also, I think it has more to do with the screens and the medium of communication that's the most popular right now. So, for example, when we coming back from break, people be like, hey, like, how are you? I'm good. How are you? He's like, how was your break? It was good. Da 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 da. What about you? Yeah, da 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 da. Da 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 da. But there's really no variation because people don't know how to communicate anymore, and it's not effective communication. People are not really talking about nothing. And I always say this to like my dad and my parents, and it's, well, not always, but it's not really like I can't really talk to a lot of people because like I can, but it's just like you have to go down to that level and do the dance with them. But I'm learning how to spice up the communication and really have real conversations. But a lot of people don't know how to respond to that. Like a lot of people probably think I'm a weirdo. Well, I probably am a weirdo. I probably am. I'll be a weirdo. But a lot of people think I'm a weirdo just by the questions I ask or the conversations I get out of people. And I think it's really important because if you have a society and a nation that doesn't know how to communicate, then what are we gonna do? Like, how do we move forward, and how do we? It's called discourse. Like, how do we work through our problems, and how do we address situations that need to be addressed if nobody knows how to talk? And this has to also do with screens because it's a lot of talking heads and so-called influencers on the internet, and this is how people come to their conclusions. I think screens also take away people's critical thinking ability because people's conclusions and people's ideas about the world and their perceptions of reality is influenced by screens. People don't do their own research outside of what they see and what they hear on screens. Like, people don't read no books. People don't spend no time thinking about real issues. People don't spend time asking questions and seeking to answer these questions. And people just outsource their thinking and their critical thinking to the screens, where people that live in reality, you have time to think about issues and to come to conclusions on your own. And this is something that's lost, especially, and it's not even for the youth. Like, I could sit here and say that these are problems of young people, but really it's adults too. Like, the reading and critical thinking and communication generation being lost because right now the youth is basically running the world because in this country, I don't know about other countries. I can only talk about the West. And I'm not a West hater. Like, I value my freedom and I value living in the West, but the West is jacked up. People in lines. But the youth is leading the charge right now because of the emergence of technology, and we are the generation of technology. So we're shifting from and there's terms for this, and there's people that wrote books about this, but I'm not gonna get into all that right now. But I'm just explaining the basic concepts. But we're shifting from a generation where the old teach the young, but now the young teach the old. So when those people die off, then we're gonna be left with most people that just communicate like robots. And I think this has to do with like the whole chat GPT thing. A computer can mimic and like write a paper sounding like a human because everybody sounds the same, and everybody has this general like screen way of talking and communicating, and nobody has their own flavor because it's like everybody's connected by their screens into this one thing. And the way it's all set up is that the creators of social networks and platforms are just people, and they can design it in any way they want to design it. So you're not really getting anything different. Like, people be in their different online bubbles or online spaces, but it's the same thing being regurgitated over and over, and it just goes back to that critical thinking thing. And so screens really affect communication, like, in a major way. Like, even like people don't talk to each other anymore. Like, I'm not sure how it was back in the day in college, if people before screens, like when they see somebody they don't know, if they would say hello or stuff like that. But I know right now people don't do none of that unless you know them. But people be fake knowing each other, and it'd be the most surface of conversation, like the most surface of conversation. That's why me personally, I'm not too interested in gaining a whole lot of friends. And that really wasn't my goal, to come here and gain a whole lot of friends. But really, like, people just be on some surface type stuff, and I'm not really with all the little small talk and having to maintain the small talk and like all this fake stuff. I'd rather just be like, you feel me? Just, if you got something to say it. But I'm not gonna be over here trying to small talk you and talk about nothing. That's just not the time I'm on, and that's what happens. That's what happens when it's screens. So screens are reality, and I'm gonna go into an anecdote about myself, and I think I've probably talked about this in the past. But when you are on a screen and you're constantly, like, say for example on Snapchat, you're always posting, or Instagram, you're always posting. It changes your brain. It changes the way you think about things. Like, instead of living in reality and enjoying the things life has to offer and enjoying the little things, you have to post everything, and you have to always show. And I think this also influences how people communicate with each other and interact with each other, because it basically turned into like I'll call it like a pissing contest, where people is just like, and I know people, and I've had these conversations, and I get drawn into them sometimes without realizing, where the conversation just like, oh, look what I did. Oh, for real? Oh yeah, this what I did. It's like, oh, look what I got. It's like, oh yeah, look what I got. And it kind of reminds me of that movie, American Psycho, especially that scene where they had the cards, and they were showing each other their business cards, and it was just like little details that was different, and it was just like a pissing contest. And man, that movie is like, it speaks volumes, because that's really the type of time people be on. If people are not talking about just mundane, like, hey, how you doing? Just like random stuff, like, hey, how's the weather? And this is not talking about like being cordial with people. This is just like, I don't know, it's just like computer talk, like Siri type thing. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but it's how it feels. But it's either that or it's just a pissing contest. It's just like, this is what I did with her and this yesterday. I was like, oh, this is what I did, this, that. I was like, oh, I'm dealing with this. It's like, oh, I'm dealing with this. But a real conversation is supposed to be layered. It's supposed to be deep. You're supposed to be trying to understand people. You're supposed to listen. You're supposed to listen and understand and ask questions, instead of just talk. And man, this is more of like an episode about communication. But and I was gonna say, with the screen thing, like, everybody's on their phone, like everybody, like, and just like on the elevator, like in passing time, like people walking to class on their phone, people exercise on their phone. And I'm not the anti-phone guy. Like, sometimes I exercise with my phone, because I use my phone as a timer when I'm stretching, or as like I'll listen to a video or whatever while I'm stretching or doing whatever. But some people, like, literally walk on the treadmill, like, scrolling, and people will walk to class just scrolling, on the elevator just scrolling. Like, all idle time is reserved for hopping in that screen reality, where the opposite to that is just using the time to think, using the time to really, you don't even have to like be critically thinking. You don't have to be in deep thought, but just using the time to, talk to somebody, using the time to just soak in the environment and just to be present, instead of being somewhere else. Because when you in that screen world, you're somewhere else. You're not where your feet are when you're in that screen world. So back to what I was talking about, back when I was on Instagram and Snapchat, like I would just want to post everything. Like if I have a good meal, just post it. If I have a thought, just post it. So that's one bad aspect about how it changes you, because you're never present. You're never really enjoying the experience for what it is, for yourself. You always have to show people, and maybe this is not bad. Maybe this is just something that happens, but I can tell you it's different than just living a regular life. It might not be good or bad, but it's not the same as if you were to not live in that world. And I noticed, because when I got off of social media or whatever, it was an adjustment period where, like, say I'll have a good meal and then I want to post it, but I was like, wait, I don't even have social media anymore. And so it took a little while for me to adjust to living in real life again, versus always wanting to post and do other things. And I'm not gonna say let's not even talk about, but we can also address just watching people's lives every day and seeing what people got going on every day. Like, that's not healthy for you to always be all up in people's business, like minding other people's business, and it is what it is. And so the whole conclusion and the whole moral of this, and what to take from all this rambling, or what I'm talking about, is that social media is not, and screens is not a representation of real life. And I can ramble about this for a long time, and I need to do a better job of organizing my ideas, because there's a lot of things that I'm missing, and it's probably a topic I'll return to. But social media and what they tell you on the news and what you see on your screen is not a representation of what's really going on. Like you see somebody posting on Snapchat or Instagram, and like everybody knows about this stuff, but people still continue to use it. People post all happy and like being like posting their relationship, but when the camera is off, when it's not in real life, like the relationship is like toxic, and people will be posting like money and posting like they having, but in reality they're not having. And people get confused. It's like smoke and mirrors. It's like charades. So the moral of this, of this video or this episode, for people that may not understand, is to understand that there's a difference between real life and a difference between screen life. But we also have to understand that because everybody's in this screen world, that a lot of times, like the things people see on social media and on these screens, they become reality. So a lot of people's identities are formed based on what they see on the screens. But if you want to live a peaceful life by yourself, then, well, not by yourself, but if you want to live a peaceful life and just be less stressed, then you have to learn how to enjoy real life without having to outsource your critical thinking and your learning and your entertainment to social media and to the internet and to the screen world. You have to learn how to go back to the old way of living, not in like that type of sense, but just understand that there's more to life to what's on the screen, and everything that's on the screen is not a representation of reality. Like some things that you see on the screen is like, a lot of things that you see on the screen is blown out of proportion, and it'll skew your perception of real life. So in closing, I would just say that we have to focus on real life issues. We have to focus on our own life. We can't be focused on other people's lives. And when I say other people's lives, it's not even really other people's lives. It's other people's, what they want to, the highlights of their life, what they want to show you is what other people want to show you. And it's not real life. And for personal experience, I can say, being off of social media, being off of Instagram for over a year and a half, I was on and off Snapchat for years. So just being off social media for years, basically, I was on and off a lot before I really just turned my back on it. It's hard to really, it's kind of hard for me to say some stuff, because I can't really, I have to put my mind back into where I was back then, because I've changed so much. But when you're not on it, like, you can focus on reality. You can focus on what you really got going on. You can focus on what you want. You could dig into some deep layers in your mind, instead of constantly just being flooded with a whole bunch of stuff from the internet. And so a lot can be said about this, and I hope I did this topic justice. I'm gonna rewatch it and put the timestamps in and see what I said. But there's also good things about the internet. Like, you can get new perspectives that can change your mindset, that can give you inspiration and motivation. You can learn like new recipes. You can learn a lot of stuff. You can learn, but social media, I think, if we're not disciplined with what we do and we're not careful with it, it can bring the worst out of us, and it could turn us into something that we don't want to be before we realize that we're it. And it's that simple. So I would say keep life simple. Understand that people be flogging on social media. Companies be flogging on social media. Like, just social media is not real life. Like, social media is something different. So just understand that social media is different. And when you focus on what's real, then I believe you can live a more peaceful life and just live, not be a dang robot, not be a dang AI. Don't be out here like communicating like ChatGPT. Like, get your own cadence, get your own bounce, get your own flow, like get in your own bag. Like, don't be a computer, don't be a robot out here. And I don't say that in like a way that other people on the internet say that. I mean, like, don't just do your thing. But I said enough. Silent but Deadly Podcast. Like I was saying in the beginning of the video, whatever you do, sometimes you don't feel like doing it. Like, I didn't feel like kicking this podcast, and I probably won't feel like editing and putting timestamps, but I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good about this episode. Next week, I'm gonna talk about, call the episode "Getting Back on the Horse," and talking about failure and kind of what I touched on today. But we'll see. But that could change. But thank y'all for watching. Please support, subscribe, like. Yeah. Let's put in that work. Let's go.